And we're live.
This is Plant Daddy Podcast, serving you intersectional horticulture. I'm Matthew.
And I'm Steven. So we have a special bonus episode tonight. I'm going to say right away that we both had several drinks at a very cool Seattle podcast meetup group tonight.
Yeah, it was actually really cool.
Yeah.
We met a lot of other local Seattle podcasts, literally doing everything that you can do on a podcast.
Yeah, so I have a huge list of podcasts that I want to listen to now. We will name drop these as we get through them, but really it's like I took so many screenshots and followed so many things tonight. Anyway, so we're excited. We are a little tired. We are definitely intoxicated. And
I've
then
had
we're gonna-
more beer to drink tonight than I have in quite a while.
So we are going to get into a movie, a Halloween-ish movie. I wouldn't necessarily call this one a scary movie, but what do you think?
Well, I would never have called this a Halloween movie, but for the purposes of our podcast, this is a plant-based horror movie.
It's Halloween-esque.
Yeah. So, Steven, tell me, Halloween, it's like the gay Christmas, right?
Yeah, it's Pride 2.
Yeah, and the nice thing about Halloween falling on a Thursday this year is that everyone, but mostly the gays, get 2 weekends to premiere various looks, spelled LEWKS, that they get to premiere on all the gay bars around the area.
Yeah.
How are you celebrating? What are you dressing as?
I dressed as nothing this year.
Okay, so like a
how
lesbian.
about-
You dress as a lesbian.
Well, previous years I dressed like a lesbian and then went out, but this year I just stayed home.
And I just want to clarify
know what?
that
Hey,
is just what Steven dresses like.
And actually, let's call out lesbians do dress up. I want to say I just finished the third season of Dragula, and it was. Oh man, I don't want to include spoilers.
Well,
No, maybe we have to edit this out.
yeah.
But I just want to say they definitely dress up, and wow. Okay,
And
so I'm actually going to
yeah.
change this. I wish I dressed up like a lesbian. I wish.
I-
Seriously.
Yeah. The thing with Halloween is that I think that a lot of people love the opportunity to put on amazing costumes and go just like parade these spectacular looks in public. I would love to do that, but I am never put together enough to do that with enough time for Halloween to happen. By the time the Halloween registers in my mind, it is like a day or two before, and I haven't had any time to find wigs or like outfits.
Well, yeah, most of my Halloween memories are me running around to thrift stores looking for things, overpaying for things that I don't quite believe in, and then I go and I have an okay time, right? But then the whole journey of it's pretty tough.
Yeah. What was your favorite Halloween costume that you've ever done?
Wow. Recently,
Or not even recently.
well, you know what? Recently, I did a Bob Ross one the last couple years that was pretty successful. I did have a squirrel.
Happy Little Trees.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
had a see-through. What's it called? A board with paint on it?
A canvas.
No, it
A
was like only-
palette?
yeah, palette.
Okay.
Okay.
Steven's not an artist.
Anyway, yeah, I'm a little cooked here. Let's say.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so getting into this, why is this movie meaningful for us?
Do our listeners know what movie?
Oh, no.
Little Shop of Horrors.
Good
I feel
catch.
like if anybody was reading between the lines, they might have guessed that our plant-based Halloween, not quite horror movie musical would be Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah.
But this is one of my favorite movies from my childhood.
So how did you get introduced, or why, or is it meaningful to you?
Yeah, it's like super duper meaningful because back when I was a child and my parents didn't think that any like current modern television was appropriate for young people, we watched a lot of old movies. And so my dad brought this movie home for us to watch one time, and it was awesome. Like, it is music, it is carnivorous plants. It's like it's a movie that basically looks like a stage play. When I watched this movie the first time, I loved it. I loved the soundtrack. Back when I was trying to be an actor, my top role that I could have ever played would have been Seymour, and I frankly would have been amazing as Seymour. Yeah.
That's you dangling like a handout to Broadway a little bit.
Yeah, like if
guys.
anybody
Okay.
from like
I
Broadway is
know
listening,
people are discovered on podcasts all the time,
yeah,
I'm sure.
if you want, I'll just start singing literally all of the songs.
So yeah, I think for me this one, it's not unmeaningful. I didn't grow up with it. I saw it a couple years ago and was shocked how much I liked it, actually, with a friend. And
And you watch this like in your 30s?
oh yeah, this was
Okay.
like, oh, you know what, maybe we'll have an edible, an edible like weed chocolate or something. It's like, it's legal here in Washington, and we're
Yeah.
like, oh, let's just relax and watch this kind of funny, strange old movie. We're gonna watch old movies. And yeah, so impressed by it. I was impressed by how they sort of translated but did not translate this sort of theatrical feel that made you feel like you're on these highly produced, fantastical kind of sets,
Yeah.
right? And they don't hide that. They play into it and or just lean into that so hard. It's gleaming and kind of cool and slick, but it's also dated, and it's also referring to another time period, and like a lot of interesting complexity, a lot of really good music. We'll get into this later. Like, plants are in it. To me, it's a little bit more of like a nod to plants, but anyway, so actually that's our next question.
Yeah.
Matthew, do we think this is a plant movie?
I'm just going to go ahead and stake out the claim that yes, it is a plant movie, because this is a musical about a alien carnivorous plant whose goal is to take over the planet. And the people who unwittingly allow this to happen are people who work in a floral shop, who are literally just trying to get their business to succeed. And they happen to be able to achieve this by having a super charismatic plant become almost the mascot of their really run-down urban flower shop that at the beginning of the movie does not have flowers in it. Like, how are you running a flower shop without flowers?
It was like a rusty old cash register, and there's some wrapping paper, I think. But like, what else is there?
It's basically the kind of place that if you go in and you're like, I want a dozen long stem roses, they're like,
Here's
I
the
don't
stems.
have those.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so Steven and I sat down with one of my personal favorite local film review podcasts, 24 Flames Per Second. And we actually recorded a couple of episodes at the same time. One of them won't be out for a couple of weeks, but if you want to hear us talk about the movie Annihilation, starring Natalie Portman and a bunch of other people, they're going to have
an eye
that
out for
episode
that.
come out soon.
Yeah, we'll definitely link to that when that's maybe toward the end of the year.
I feel like that was a interesting conversation that had nothing to do with this one. But then after we recorded that one, we talked about Little Shop of Horrors with the fantastic team over at 24 Flames Per Second.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to talk about before we just move over to the interview with them?
No, it's definitely an interesting discussion. It's not, I would say, super plant oriented, but we tried to hit plants as well. And it's an interesting sort of off topic, delve into this, I think, good movie.
Yeah. And something that I think is interesting to point out, we watched this movie from the 1980s with a 2019 perspective. So there's a lot of conversation that we come up with that is super focused on the idea of watching an older movie through a modern lens. And I think that you're going to hear some thoughts come up that wouldn't have occurred to you. They didn't occur to us, but we had a really great time chatting with them.
Yep. So here it is.
Yeah, enjoy. All right, so here we are with the crew behind 24 Flames Per Second, which is my favorite local film review podcast. Hey guys, do you want to go around the table and introduce yourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, favorite local movie podcast. There's more of those in Seattle than you'd think. There might be.
We don't know about them. We've never heard
That's
of them.
great. Don't worry about them. But yeah, everybody. Hi. My name is Robert Spiewak. I'm the host of 24 Flames Per Second, which is it's a show where we just have people argue about movies. We just had Matthew and Steven on our show to argue about Annihilation, and we're excited to be here to talk about Little Shop of Horrors. Yeah. We got a couple other folks that are regulars on the show. If y'all want to introduce yourselves.
Sure. I'm Chris Pepper Hambrick, and I've been on the show off and on for a while, the 24 Flames, obviously. But I guess you want some local and/or musical theater cred for
sure.
okay.
Pull
So
it away.
I am the co-founder, co-producer of Hello Earth Productions, so
awesome.
local theater group. I've been an actor for most of the time that I can remember, and I also have taught movie classes at SIF. So come into this with some not specific Little Shop cred, but yeah.
But we love the cred that you bring.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
My name is Kevin Connor. I am one of the co-hosts on 24 Flames, and I am one of the programmers for a local film festival called NIFTY, which is the National Film Festival for Talented Youth, which is happening very soon, or just happened.
I mean, we're recording this the day before the 2019 festival.
Okay.
This is going to be published
very
next
excited.
week.
Great.
But
It
yeah,
just
we can put
happened.
this in social media.
It was
maybe.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go and
Everyone had
So
fun.
good. Check it out.
Yeah.
Check all
Yeah.
the posts that are out. But I'm excited to get into Little Shop of Horrors because I had not seen it
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, so that's actually where I want to start with this.
Let's go.
So, for me personally, this is a movie that I grew up with.
Yeah.
My parents loved making us watch old movies because they were less inappropriate than the ones that were out when I was a child, apparently. So, Little Shop was one of my favorite movies. I loved musicals, I loved plants. And so it's a little weird to me hearing that somebody didn't have that upbringing. Tell me, what was your reaction watching it as a adult the first time?
I was cautious because I knew like what it was when it came out. I'm not against any of those things, but I'm like, I hope this holds up. I hope this isn't something that I needed to have seen when I was young.
Yeah.
I just missed it. It's a blind spot. I didn't have anything against it. I'm in with most of the things that this is. And I was watching it, and I was texting Robert actually while I was watching it, and I was like 20 minutes in, I texted you, I'm like, does this movie slap?
I was like,
It's my
absolutely.
my direct text.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoyed it. It's always interesting to me to see musicals adapted for on the big screen. And I'm a little cautious of that, but I enjoyed this thoroughly. In fact, I'm not sure if I watched the right version because there's an ending.
There are multiple versions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we watched the sad ending one, or well, depends on
Which I think is fascinating. Right?
It took a turn.
What
I
a
think it's
bold
interesting. I think it's a choice that
Yeah.
Frank Oz made. Was like we're having this as an option.
Now, Chris, are you familiar with the ending that the stage play has?
Okay, so full disclosure, I think initially saw like a college production of this, and then I watched the movie, and I honestly haven't seen it since. So I'm
right.
familiar with the plot of both
Yes.
endings, but I honestly I don't have that is not my strong recollection of this film.
Okay, but you're at least aware that the stage play ends in
Yes.
tragedy.
Yes.
The movie could have
Audrey
ended that
Chu
way,
wins.
but
And
they
the studio was
yeah.
like, "What is
And
this?"
they filmed
Yeah.
both.
yeah.
Well, mostly because the audience tests were like
They were like-
15%.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it was
Yeah.
literally like
Not a fan.
do not, and basically it was like you cannot release this unless you
Yeah.
change the ending.
Yeah. So I don't want to start with the ending.
Okay, fair enough.
But that said, do we think that was the right choice for them to make just right off the bat? The happy ending?
So we
Yeah.
should explain the endings a little bit, right?
Yeah. So for anybody
If
who
it makes more sense to not start at the ending.
Yeah, no, but
We
this
can
is
get there.
this to me is an important thing that kind of puts the rest of the film in context.
Okay.
So for anybody who is not familiar, this is the story of Seymour, who is a sad, downtrodden person who loves plants. And he one day finds this plant at a flower shop that was basically beamed to Earth during a total eclipse of the sun. Total eclipse of the sun. Ding. And
Okay, I don't recall that.
sorry,
but-
I'm going to try to not sing along, but it's
Yeah.
really hard. This plant is a carnivorous one that he has to be feeding blood to, and unfortunately, it creates a huge interest in the flower shop that he is an employee at. And he has to continue feeding this plant blood, and eventually people, in order for the flower shop to be successful, so that people continue to come and shop there and see the plant. Eventually, the plant is so large that it's eating whole people, and it wants to take over the world. So
It's very demanding. It's singing. It's
Yeah.
now threatening his girlfriend.
it knocks down
It's prank
the plant
calling his
shop.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. With its roots.
Like the plant is malicious, and the movie ends with Seymour electrocuting the plant to death, and he and his love interest running off and enjoying their life out in the suburbs. However, the original ending was that they all just get eaten by the plant, and the plant wins.
And,
So the prank call happens. Audrey gets half eaten.
Audrey is the plant.
Audrey 2 is
Audrey's-
the plant.
Audrey
Oh, you're
1 is his
right.
girlfriend. Audrey 2,
Right.
yeah.
Audrey Prime. But yeah, so she gets lured in and half eaten. Seymour rescues her, and out in the alley, she is mortally wounded, and she asks him to feed her to the plant after she dies, and he does so, and then goes to kill himself
On the roof.
And let me see, what else? What do I have? Some guy shows up and is like, "I took a clipping of your plant. I'm going to sell them to everybody." And Seymour decides that that's not a good idea, dude. And he goes down to confront Audrey 2 about this. Audrey 2 turns out can get out of the pot and eats Seymour, and then eats everybody, and many Audrey 2s are now out in the world being mass marketed, and they grow very large. And the movie ends with one of them atop the Statue of Liberty. They're taking over all the world. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's two very different
It
stories.
is. I think it's really telling that, this musical was successful. It had this really dark ending. They got away with it, right? And you bring it to Hollywood, and everyone's like, "Oh no, hell no, you can't do that."
Yeah.
And that doesn't say to me great things about the Hollywood process, like, to me personally. Like, in terms of, like, my personal morality, like, I don't think that you should, like, be condemned to death because you made one mistake with a plant.
Yeah.
But in terms of, like,
I'm not sure that I agree.
that's up to everyone's interpretation. But, like, it's not like what I'm about to say does not imply that I think people deserve to die for making mistakes. But in a Greek tragedy, did we learn anything from this experience? Like, the original ending makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
It's like you make this bargain with the devil, and you reap what you sow, like, literally, right? So,
People were murdered. Yeah.
right, people are murdered. You remorselessly, fueled your own interests by bargaining with this thing that you thought you had control over and you couldn't. It's the classic science fiction tale, right? And by making it like, they can just run away to the suburbs. I mean, that is not a
It's
great message.
So many 1980s messages to me.
Right.
Like this.
Right.
And murder, but you got rich, and then you were happily ever after, and it's fine. Like that.
Right. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like this is me as an adult looking back at my memory of the film, but I feel like there's so much you could say about, like, 80s attitudes towards the city and white flight
this
and, like,
whole
all of
list
this
of
other
themes.
stuff that
Yeah.
that it plays into, that by making that the ending, you're just playing into it all the harder.
So we
That
wanted
sounds
to
like-
talk about themes,
Yeah.
and you've just brought up one of the biggest ones that we've
That's
identified.
it sounds like your theme.
Yeah. So Steven and I were both really struck by this is a movie where the 80s is looking back at the 60s,
Yeah.
having, like, urban decay and white flight and, like, all of
Yeah.
these things happening. It's really complex, and we were curious.
The crack
So-
epidemic, because they're like, Skid Row. We live
Yeah.
on Skid
Yeah,
Row. It's horrible
right.
here.
Yeah, there's, like, a line in one of the songs about, like, people flopping in the snow from their drug abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so, yeah, expand on that more, please.
Okay, so the central characters are all white. They are, by which the central human characters are all white. They are living in a sort of depressed area of a clearly urban environment. Although it's a fantastical, it's not like a real,
Yeah.
like it's a fantasy of an urban environment. And Audrey, sings about getting out, like they want to go to the suburbs. And yes, it's satirized with the plastic on the furniture and all of
Yeah.
that other stuff, but it's still this very suburban cookie cutter, this is her dream.
It's somewhere that's green.
It's somewhere that's green, right? And it's, even though it's heavily satirized, there are still other elements in the film that make it difficult for me to say, like, is the film satirizing the entire, like, racial tone of it, or is it playing into it? Because you also have there's the three, like the Greek chorus of
Yeah.
the three
Yeah.
girls
Yeah.
who are kind of magically able to transform themselves. They're magically able to
Yeah.
monitor everything that happens.
Yeah.
You know, they kind of play into a magical Negro trope, right? In a
Like,
way.
all of them.
Right? All of, together as a unit.
Yeah.
And then you've got Audrey, too, who, yes, is an alien and a plant, so clearly not an African-American male, but it is coded to the point where
Yeah.
it is impossible to divorce the voice and the mannerisms in the voice and the song stylings from like Black American, speech. And again, there's nothing inherently wrong with any of that, except for it plays into this white flight narrative, the degradation of the urban environment, the need for these characters, the white characters, to leave that environment, and furthermore, the attempt to exploit these other elements in order to do that, and to exploit like literally the lives of other people in this space in order to for their own personal gain, and
Yeah.
then escape. Like, so I don't think that was intentional. I don't think there's anything conscious about that as a narrative through either like, the people writing the musical or Frank Oz or anything, but it does play into those tropes really heavily.
Yeah, we were really struck watching it, just the level of race that was apparent. Like, obviously, watching this as a fourth grader or something, you don't pick up on that. But like the old Chinese man who sold him Audrey
That's
too
right.
for
Yeah.
$1.95
And that
or
sort
whatever.
of mystical Orient type
yeah.
of deal.
So in vogue, like what Gremlins came out the same year,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And you've also got like
the very
Greek
Jewish
chorus
shopkeeper.
of those three women who are
Mr.
dressed like
Mushnick.
doo-wop girls for
Yeah.
half the
Right.
movie. Then they're in like this really like orientalized garb for that scene, and you have Mr. Mushnick who's like very Jewish stereotypes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting to see that take more of a role watching it as an adult.
Right. Yeah.
So
That is
you've
interesting.
blown through like half of our themes list.
I'm
at
so
least.
sorry.
Oh no,
Yeah.
Thank you.
in the best possible way. Like we were thinking, a lot of the same things. So yeah, it's interesting to see that now, and especially with the plant. You try to give these people all the possible sort of benefit of the doubt, right? Being in this time, maybe like in the 80s, like okay, yes, these characters maybe are treated well, for that time, like as in they're there and then this is sort of a community or something, but yeah, you can't help but feel
Well, there's no
like this
denying
is
that Audrey 2 is cool, right?
Yeah.
And there's an
it's-
element of like, Motown R&B singer that is like
Well, I mean, it's
also
Levi Stubbs. It's
Right,
from the
so-
Four Tops, yeah.
right. So that's
wow.
also inherently cool. So that's not a bad thing, right? I don't think it's necessarily like, oh, you can't have Levi Stubbs play an alien man-eating plant. That's
Right.
not, But when you pair it with a lot of the other themes, then it becomes like,
Exactly.
oh, is this part of that? Now, Stubbs
these
himself
caricatures
said that
or
was
something?
ridiculous. He said, it's an alien plant.
Oh,
I
I didn't
wouldn't
know
have
that.
played it if it was, I looked it up. He said, I wouldn't have played this if I thought it was racist.
Yeah.
So, and that's fair.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fair call for him to make, obviously. But I think it's also fair to look back, from like 2019, looking at a movie
Yeah.
from 35 years ago that's made about a time that was like 30,
Yeah.
40 years before that. It's
Yeah.
like,
It's complex.
yeah, but unbeknownst to anyone making it, did it play into these things? I'm not going to
Yeah.
crucify them for that. That's not what I'm talking about. But
Yeah,
it's like,
it's-
does it illustrate something?
I think that's kind of where we were left too. We're like, oh, we don't think there's something ill.
I was trying to kind of convince Steven, and I don't think that I really did, that a lot of the music in it is either like very ballady, or Steve Martin's song is a little bit more like early rock and roll.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
there's
the
all of these
doo-wop-y.
vocal tones.
Yeah.
Yeah, doo-wop. Like it's all 50s, early 60s, and then the plant is kind of doing like vocal stylings that are more late 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if that was like a deliberate choice just to show your world is changing, the very way that you express yourself in this like big divide of like urban problems that they're creating a setting for.
Well, how
like,
do you show alienness?
sort of.
Like,
Yeah.
you can, so it's.
But they didn't. They just
Right.
showed, exactly what they did, which was very understandable and relatable to us. Mm-hmm. What would you have had them do instead to show alienness, perhaps, to speculate?
to show alienness,
Well,
of the
just to make us that they weren't borrowing on established racially charged cultural.
Yeah, you're
And
right. That's going to be really hard to do. You have to find something to differentiate
it. Would have had to be, some garbly, like...
Right, you don't want it to be like, and now here's some stereotypical, like, theremin
Language
noises
or
or
something.
something. But, like,
That would have been wonderful.
and the
Such a
new one-
chance.
yeah,
but I think maybe what you do is you're more careful about what is the narrative of the white character's decision to leave. What is the narrative around it? So you keep Levi Stubbs, keep Audrey 2, keep the music, right? But do you have to have like the doo-wop girls portrayed the way they are? Like, do you have to have Mr. Chang? Anyway,
I do not remember his name.
portrayed, right?
Yeah.
So all the other trappings, it's again, the plant isn't necessarily the problem. It's when it plays into other established stereotypes or, some people even look at the design of Audrey 2 and say that there are some
large
caricature
lips.
things.
I was just like,
but like,
I'm getting lost in
other
that
people
now.
are like, plants don't even have lips, so what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And so there's just that aspect of like, I think you just have to be more careful. It's not like you can never lean into stereotypes. Like stereotypes usually exist for a reason, and I think sometimes they can be useful coding for certain things, right? But you have to be careful of like the context in which you put them. And I think there are aspects of this movie that weren't cognizant of that. And
So basically, you're just glad that Audrey 2 wasn't Jar Jar Binks.
pretty
I am
much.
glad for that.
I'm glad that when anything
I'm
isn't Jar Jar
always
Binks,
glad.
but
Whenever
that's
that
another
happens.
really, really difficult thing because that actor didn't think that he was committing a racial atrocity.
Yeah.
Like he took a role, he did the best he could, and he has suffered as a result of the backlash,
Yeah.
right? And so that is a person, an actor of color, who has been driven out of the industry and
Wow,
worse.
I didn't know that.
And worse,
Because of the backlash he got for this character that I think is a horrible racist stereotype. But obviously, the choice he made condemned him, when I don't think that was a conscious choice that he made to go be a racist caricature.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And so, there's a lot of people blaming him and blaming that character for these things that, he was not conscious of. And who are we to say we're correct about whether this portrayal?
Yeah.
Anyway, that gets off track, but it's complicated. There's a context to it.
But to sort of
yeah,
to bring this back a little bit, was that your overwhelming feeling? Was whoa, complicated, heavy issues, or was this light and enjoyable for everybody?
Oh no! This is just me reflecting on those
totally fair.
themes.
Just
No,
Specifically, if you
no,
want
it's
to narrow in
it's
on
super fun movie. I'm not.
Because I think we were asking ourselves that actually watching it. We're like, oh, are we gonna be left with this feeling of whoa, there's a lot of complicated fair questions like that.
Yeah.
We
And
didn't
I
want the
just
whole
think-
conversation to be about, is Audrey 2 racist?
Oh no! Yeah, we can move on.
Yeah, well,
I mean, I also didn't watch. The first time I watched it was I think when I was in college, if I remember right, and it was based on funnily enough, I remember asking my dad at some point what's your favorite movie, and he said probably Little Shop of Horrors, which was. My dad really likes Gunsmoke.
Has he been on this podcast?
This is so
And no, he hasn't. We should have an all dads episode. Of the
Yes.
show.
Oh, wow.
Anyways,
it's a good idea for June.
but he, yes,
Yep.
but he, he likes old westerns, and we have bonded over Star Wars, and
Little Shop is kind of out of left field for that.
no, absolutely no. He said that, and I was like, really? I was like, really?
It's the last movie he'd watched.
And so I went and watched it, and I was just like, this is something I did not know about my dad. Because
That's
this is
fascinating.
this is a movie that's very this is what this movie is not shy about being it's a musical.
Yeah.
There's a giant plant, and so it's funny because when I first watched it, I remember just kind of being blindsided by that, but rewatching it for this, it was I also reading through your question list of are there problematic stereotypes, and I didn't really I was really kind of trying to think about it, and I didn't get there because I think that and this might be a reflection on me personally, is that I'm a little bit of a naive movie watcher where like someone will call those things out and then I'll reflect and be like, oh yeah, no, that's not good.
Yeah.
Or that's not something, I mean, unless it's really blatant and obvious,
Sure.
then I'll
And-
latch onto it.
Like Mickey
Yeah,
Rooney and
and
so
Breakfast
you-
at Tiffany's.
Well, no,
That's, I mean,
that's
you
different.
You got that one, right?
That's- no, but I'll agree with you. Like, I saw this maybe 2 years ago for the first time, so like
Yeah.
I was high possibly, but I didn't notice those things really. It was just.
And now we're
this
talking about
feeling
it, and
where
I'm thinking
know.
about, I'm like,
No, and I'm not
Hungry
trying to
too,
be
voiced
like
by
a
one of-
downer or whatever.
but our
Like,
team-
yeah.
no,
Not
I
like this
don't
was a
think so,
question
down.
that
Yeah.
you know,
And I think
question
that,
we
at
teed up
least
for you guys.
woke-minded persons in 2019 have a very different view
Yeah,
than
and
we
we
did
run into that on
recently.
our show all the time.
Yeah.
Where it's like, this movie came out 4 years ago, and we're like, yeah, now it wouldn't work. Or like, we just did American Beauty on the show not that long ago.
Oh, that's
And
right.
that was like, God, what a well-made movie.
God,
but
I loved that
fuck.
movie so much.
Yeah.
But
Like-
almost every storyline in this is
Yeah.
really,
Really
bad
problematic.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we know if this 86 version of the movie are they making these choices, or are these choices that
The
were
musical
in the
made?
musical and the first film?
Part of it is that these are just choices that were made in the original story,
Yeah.
which is from like a 1960 B.
Roger Corman
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson.
film.
Steven and I tried.
Oh, that's right. That's,
Jack
yeah,
Nicholson
He is one of the
Yeah.
cameos.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow, we didn't
we
make
tried
it.
to watch it. I have seen it before, but Steven and I sat down to watch scenes of that. It is so uncomfortable and hard to get through.
Yeah.
In what
I'm
way?
really looking forward to watching that.
The acting is not.
It's very
It's
wooden,
not
very
acting.
like B minus kind of movie of that
Okay.
era. I
Yeah,
think when people
Roger
show up
Corman,
around-
yeah.
Yeah, and they
Checks
just
out.
deliver lines, and they're like, get the plant, okay, doctor," and then they just like
Oh,
walk
God.
outdoors,
Yeah.
and that's just like what keeps happening.
But the amazing thing then when you watch the musical is how those actors took those characters and they like made them whole people.
I felt like
Right.
the casting was so excellent, right? In
Yeah. I mean,
this,
Rick
this
Moranis.
version.
Yeah.
It makes you miss Rick Moranis.
Rick
No, I
Moranis
know.
is
This
amazing.
this was like a perfect role for him. I
Yeah.
felt like, right?
And
it
Ellen
was
Green.
perfect, right? And then Bill Murray and Steve Martin.
We were talking
like,
about that.
oh my,
that
it was
scene.
like,
Cameo
The,
There's like
train.
a whole-
the sadist versus the masochist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a really, really stereotypical portrayal of sadism. Hold up in
Like, I
my
love her.
we're kind of like, we're like, is this kind of clumsy as well? Is
We were
this
also
a
wondering,
little
like,
bit
how gay it got?
ill-informing?
That's true.
Like,
We were kind of like, and to me, it wasn't like,
I could
offensive in some way, but I was kind of like, okay, it is sort of it's an extremely
It's definitely played
humorous-
for humor.
Yeah.
yeah.
When,
But that happened to be the scene from the 1960 version
Yes.
that we
And,
watched.
and that one was kind of,
that was gayer than the one where Bill Murray was.
but in a pretty negative way. There was kind of
Yeah.
like, oh, here's this
problematic gaze. Yeah.
Yeah, like, oh,
Yeah.
a strange queer person wants to have his teeth worked on, and he's obviously very weird, and they treat him very, like, kind of like,
They're like,
suspiciously. the
why is he
entire
like
time.
this?
yeah.
So, yeah, but in that way, I'm like, okay, well, they took that, and they made it something, like, really memorable, really funny.
Yeah.
With these, actors that obviously have amazing, humorous chemistry.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
They had fantastic cameos. Something that I want to ask you specifically,
Yeah.
though, because this was your first time seeing it, what were elements of it that particularly stood out to you from a 2019 adult perspective?
Just how, like, top to bottom, this movie is not trying to be sleek, but is, I think, from the songs to, like, the way, like, every set is constructed.
Yeah.
Every house is kind of like this almost facade type thing.
Yeah.
And then
It looks like a backlot.
So,
Yeah.
and they lean into all of that, and it's like unabashed about that. And I vibed with it. It was great. Like, I just really got into it, where they're owning it. People are just dancing on the streets, which is always tough to pull off, I feel like, in a movie, when people are literally dancing in the street.
Right.
But it was just this good-natured type ordeal that was just pretty funny throughout.
Okay,
A funny
so-
ordeal.
A funny
Yeah.
ordeal.
Yeah, I think there's always that question of when you want to make a movie of a musical, and like, people are pretty. Some people reject that idea of people breaking into song. So how do you get over that? And one of the ways is to make their setting not realistic either,
Yeah.
right? So that
Yeah.
you're signaling, hey man, this isn't like the real world. You know?
Yeah.
It feels like it happens in a back alley of Sesame Street almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Like
With
amazing
puppets even.
event.
Directed
Yeah.
by Frank
Yeah,
Oz.
exactly.
So,
Well, let's talk about Frank Oz's involvement, because to me personally, I think that the absolute triumph of this movie is how beautifully they articulated a plant as a main
yeah.
character.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
What did everybody have to think about Audrey and all her various stages of growth?
I mean, I found myself getting kind of lost in thinking about the mechanics of
Yeah.
how they just made, because like, I mean, clearly like the first one is just a little boop, boop, boop,
Yeah.
little Pac-Man.
Well, she's a little baby.
Yeah, yeah. And then eventually, once Audrey is full size, before in the ending we watch breaking out of the pot, like the lip has many points of articulation.
Yeah.
The lips, and then also clearly the tentacles, everything.
And I
The
presume
vines.
these are all basically practical effects. Like
They
there's
had-
very
they had
little.
to be,
yeah.
I mean, maybe I was trying to look for like keyed out backgrounds and things. Like maybe it was a miniature.
Oh, wow, yeah.
But
I don't
I
think
think there
that
was-
happened a lot.
But
I
they
read that
must
there
have
was-
done it full size.
I read that there was some parts that were slowed down and that the film was slowed down and then
Makes
sped
sense.
up. So they did some of the effects just using film speed
Yeah.
to get some of it. But yeah, I mean
it
otherwise.
rocks.
So,
Like, it's- it's
are we
great.
going to find that puppet on eBay or whatever happened to it?
Well, there's a lot of them because there's so many stages of growth. I think that the most interesting one is when Seymour like first gives him a drop of blood from where he pricked his finger on the roses.
Yeah.
And in triumphant music, you see Audrey like literally grow. Like, I want to know how they did that scene
Yeah.
because you actually watch leaves expand and her pod get larger on camera.
Yeah.
And I was looking to see, like, is there some kind of, like, green screen trickery? Like, how are they doing this? So cool.
Well, what I mean, part of what's behind that is probably the fact that it was a stage play.
Yeah.
Right? And I assume this is still true, but my understanding is that if you license the play, if you get the legal rights to perform this, you have to rent the Audrey puppets.
Are you serious?
Also,
Really?
Yeah,
Well, they
you
really
can't-
care about what the
Yeah,
play
you
looks
can't
like.
just make your own.
bonkers.
Right?
makes
So
sense.
they really care about that character. Like there's a lot of thought put into how that is portrayed.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's a really interesting aspect.
Does that
of
even
this.
like carry forward to like now?
Yeah.
Like, are they
Yeah.
still people
This
out
is
there
why
modeling?
Exactly.
we didn't
Wow.
perform this musical at my high school. When I was still planning to be an actor, my dream
Yeah.
role was Seymour. And it never happened because it
Yeah.
was too much of a hassle to
Mm-hmm.
get the rights and
Wow.
the puppetry. It is a really carefully protected thing because it's the cornerstone of this story.
It's like the main
Wow.
character, basically.
Yeah.
So,
So
if someone
fascinating.
like shows up with a sock, like your intellectual property is diminished. Right?
Although on the
So
other hand,
I
I would
suppose.
totally
that
watch
would be really
that.
cool.
I do want like a sock one-woman production of this show.
I mean,
Yeah.
as someone who
Chris, if you were to do that, I would buy tickets opening night.
you should probably look up the stuff I actually do. It is not off-brand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Do Little Shop of Horrors in the park.
We were thinking about doing Dune in the park with like the Santa Wars.
Oh my god.
We do Star Wars and Star Trek in the park.
I've
have
seen
heard
Star Trek in
about
the park,
that.
like multiple times. Okay,
You mean
awesome.
here or in Portland or here?
Oh, here in Seattle.
Oh, then yeah, that's
Awesome.
You're
me.
looking at
Okay.
Captain Kirk.
Oh my
Oh
gosh!
my God.
I'm like, okay, like, I haven't sat like front row ever, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm thinking back. Like, does this look familiar? Like, I probably took some pictures. I'm gonna go look.
Sorry, I have to part my hair the right way.
Amazing.
So, for this
Anyway.
movie, though, what are the elements that you think hold up the best? That watching today, you just think, fuck, they couldn't make that better now.
We could just say Audrey 2, and then we can talk about other stuff.
Yeah, so let's move on.
The plant
Yeah.
looks great.
Could you imagine
Agreed.
what that
So-
would be if they did that with CGI?
It would,
Oh,
it
no.
would look like absolute
Yeah.
garbage.
Okay, let's move on
I
to
do
that
not
entirely.
think they could do
Yeah.
it better with CG.
No.
Nope.
So, I mean, as plant people here, we're curious. Like, is this a plant movie to you? Would you say, like, oh yeah, it's a plant movie?
I mean, technically, it's an
Like-
alien movie.
That's true.
Yeah, it feels.
Yeah.
Because I'll admit,
It follows some plant rules.
Well, Steve and I were actually being totally plant nerds about it, and when they
Yeah.
were just showing like foliage and other botanical things in the background, we were like, well, those are all silk flowers. Those are all calathea.
Yeah, this would require
and we were like
reverse osmosis
specifically
water. We're like-
looking for plants of the time period in the 60s, and they did not show a single snake plant or a single like Swiss cheese plant, which were just like the cornerstone of that interior design moment. And we were just kind of scoffing like, well, they're clearly only using available plants from the time they filmed this.
How dare they?
But
So is that a mark against it as a plant movie then?
that is
like,
a observation that plant nerds
not-
make
it's
that
not
has
plant-
nothing to do with the enjoyment of a movie. Yeah.
Now I'm thinking of like what it like planthropology, like the
That
plants
is a
through
fascinating
time.
thing.
Yeah, right.
And like I will
Anyway.
always notice in a period movie
I
if
love
they have the
that.
wrong plants in like a Victorian parlor.
Right, that's the wrong potted palm. They
it's-
wouldn't have
yeah,
done
it's like
that. Yeah.
that needs to be Neanthus bella, you
Right.
idiots.
Oh my,
Yeah.
I would like to explore this further. What's interesting about Audrey being an alien is that, yeah, you can dismiss that question with like, well, obviously Audrey 2 is an alien, so it has nothing to do with plants. But, I mean, the movie deliberately designs her based on a Venus flytrap. So,
Yeah.
obviously, modified, obviously. So,
Yeah.
obviously, it's a plant. Right? It's like saying, I mean, it's like any science fiction. It's like, well, this isn't about real human relations because that's an alien. You're like, no, it's obviously about human beings.
yeah.
Like,
Having just got done talking
right,
about
right.
the weird science of annihilation,
Yeah.
I think we can leave the
so, I mean,
alien
there's something in
argument
it
at the
that
door.
I think it's a plant movie. It's also it's not actually a science experiment, but it's in line with those science experiment stories like
Yeah.
Frankenstein or whatever, where it gets away from you.
There's trial
like-
and error. He has to learn what Audrey
Right.
2 eats.
Right. So, I mean, do you guys, as plant people, I'm not a plant person, but as
I'm super not.
I mean, I watched it as a child, and I was into plants then, and I thought this was fun. And my first carnivorous plant, I named Audrey.
yep.
I think that everybody who has a carnivorous plant has probably named at least one of them Audrey at some point.
And see, that's not true. No, like I think because
Steven
I've had a
doesn't.
bunch of them. Yeah, a bunch of carnivorous plants, and for me, I think I saw this. Yeah, it was an alien movie, probably not a plant movie.
You're like,
at
how
no-
dare they denigrate my precious
Oh
carnivorous
no, it
plant
wasn't even
with
like
this
that. I just
bullshit?
didn't even think of it like that. And then maybe later, I think people started making jokes. So like, oh yeah, it's just like that movie, Little Shop of Horrors, right? You have a plant like this, and I'm like, oh,
I love that
yeah, I
accent you just
guess.
busted.
I mean, or whoever that's someone in my life. I
He
don't
was
know, it's
living
like,
in Brooklyn at the time.
yeah. But it's like, oh, people will say that, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I suppose, but there's not really a plant quite like that. Or then they're like, oh, well, you could in this flytrap, can it eat, hamburger or blood or something? And we're like, no. Or
But
like,
one of
could
the
you
really
dispose of a
cool
body that
things-
way? Like, no.
But the plant design borrows elements from so many different types of plants. So like I garden with my mom. I don't have an outdoor garden, so I use hers.
you
And
go.
we'll constantly like be pointing things out like that looks like Audrey too. Like the flower
Seriously?
buds of like an oriental poppy look so much like that. There's so many plants that call back elements of Audrey.
Wow.
I think that their character design was really clever because
Yeah.
you can just pull out all these little things like, oh, well, that's like botanically accurate anatomy for a completely made up thing.
Is it kind of like one of those things like Jaws that would really divide shark people? Because like half of them are like, this is the movie that made me love sharks, and the other half is like, this is the movie that made people really hate sharks. And
I
like,
think that's perfect, actually, because for me, that's shocking to hear you say that. I'm like, what?
Well, I can't
You go
imagine-
around point of Audrey?
Yeah, like someday I'm just gonna like send you photos from my mom's garden and be like, this looks like Audrey. This looks like Audrey. This also looks like Audrey.
And I'm not going to be like, no, you're wrong, but I'm just like, why did you think of that?
I
I'm
just
like,
think that it's
Audrey's
so
not in my
clever the way
head
that they
ever.
designed, like based on actual real things to create this thing that's completely not.
Yeah, and I agree. It's brilliant. But
Yeah.
after this, I'll probably forget about Audrey again until I watch the movie.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
probably.
It's just like,
but that's
yeah,
just
it's
how
interesting.
you go.
I mean, yeah.
But do you guys specifically have more of an inclination towards carnivorous plants because of this movie?
oh, absolutely.
Like, would you grow one after
Where
watching
you're like,
this?
oh, you're going to notice them now.
I
or
mean,
something.
no, I mean, I guess I'm one of those people that like it's obviously just a movie, but it personifies that thing and gives me an emotional attachment to a thing that I didn't
Yeah.
have before.
sure.
Right? It's not, and because I am never going to like be eaten by a shark or be eaten by a carnivorous plant, it's a fond emotional attachment, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't turn me against it, but it does give me something that were I not initially inclined to notice them, yes, I will notice them more now after watching that, right? So I think there's a lot of stuff like that the movie elements might have some negativity in the
Yeah,
narrative,
sure.
but it brings something to your attention that wasn't there before in a fun way.
How about you?
Especially with the happy ending.
That you didn't
that I
see.
didn't
I mean,
watch.
right.
I watched.
If you don't like the plan, just electrocute it. Man.
I mean, you guys you don't watch Psycho and then jump in the shower? You're like, that's what looks good right now, a shower.
I've only seen the movie once, and yet, like, every 5 times I shower, I think to myself while I'm shampooing my hair, I shouldn't stand in the center because that's the most common place that somebody would swing up.
Okay, these movies, they all stay with you very differently. Okay, that's what we're finding.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Amazing.
You're gonna send them photos of a shower. Be like, this looks like Psycho. This looks like Psycho.
So, the final question we want to ask, outside of just the plant hobby, what does this movie say about giving yourself over to an interest entirely?
Yeah.
With which ending?
That's a good question, Chris.
Yeah, like,
Which Audrey is the
slavish,
interest?
like slavish devotions to interests or projects or something. I feel
Something
like we
that
got a
creeps
little bit about that.
insidiously
We're like,
into how you live
we're
your
like, wow,
life.
he's murdering for this now. He's
Work-life
spending all
balance,
this time.
importance.
Yeah.
Don't give your blood to anybody.
I mean, ask some questions first. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you're donating blood. Then
Unless you're donating
Yeah.
blood, they're
Donate it
safe
to
as far as
people
we
who
know.
need it, not a
Yeah.
plant from another planet.
fair.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those like really classic tales of like something that seems harmless that like you really should have seen this escalating.
Yeah,
right.
yes.
Like but it's the proverbial slippery slope. Like I do think it's one thing to like give like a plant a couple drops of your blood. I would not balk at that. That would just be like, I mean, it would be weird, but
Well, you
I'd
come
probably
in
get
the-
over it.
Yeah,
you
me
know?
Come in the
too.
next day, the plant's 3 times as big.
Yeah,
You're like,
maybe-
hey, okay, not doing that anymore.
yeah.
Well, then I'd start thinking, like, can I go to Iwajimai and, like, get some blood?
Well,
like,
I mean, Seymour
Yeah.
tried. Seymour
Right,
said,
and
"Can
it
I
didn't
feed
work.
you
Butcher.
sirloin?" And
Yeah.
Seymour said, "No."
Yeah, he didn't
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Audrey was like, this is not...
Or Audrey.
Yeah,
Convenient.
yeah. But,
Specifically asked for blood.
yeah. But is that, like, a warning to people who are very invested in their interests?
I mean, I assume so. Like any mad scientist type of narrative, right?
Yeah.
Or Faustian bargain type of thing, where it's like, it's all very well for you to be like a dedicated florist or a scholar or a scientist, but once you start down this path of I am willing to give literally my own blood, then once you do that, then you have to be willing to sacrifice everything else. Because fundamentally, there's no difference between sacrificing a stranger on the street and sacrificing your girlfriend.
Yeah.
There is no difference morally between those two
Sure.
things, right? So once you're willing to cross that line,
Yeah.
right? I guess the question is, where is that line, right?
Where do we feel Seymour's
Well,
line was?
I mean, I think that's the struggle Seymour goes through. Is
Wait,
like
wait.
there's clearly a vested interest in feeding the dentist to the plant because then
Seymour
Audrey,
didn't
there's
even kill
less
the
competition.
dentist, though. The dentist died
True.
from his own
From
gas
the nitrous,
inhalation.
He
Yeah.
did chop up a dentist, though.
Yeah, but the dentist was dead of his own action.
This is
I don't
true.
know if that makes it okay, Matthew. Okay, I'm gonna Google that. Can you chop up a
He,
body?
he
It's
did not
fine.
have to
I
take the
don't
body
think-
out of the dentist's
Still,
office.
Yeah.
still a legal problem. I do think there's a slight moral difference between like killing someone and utilizing a body after it's gone. That's
Yeah.
my own personal
But-
moral
but he
code.
went there
but
to kill him,
He
right?
did, yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe not so much of a difference.
So I guess it's that intent
But I guess I'm thinking
question.
about
Yeah.
like that part of the narrative is that he's not a successful florist assistant, right? So this is the thing that makes him successful. So what does that say about like the price of success and or the illusion of success? Because nothing he did actually made it. It's a sacrifice made him
Yeah.
successful, but it was Audrey too that was the real draw. So I don't know. I'm sorry getting muddled in my own head, but like there is a story here about someone who's not actually worthy of the attention that he gets because he's not the one actually driving this success.
Oh, yeah, just
Right,
how
so-
random such wild success really is, right? Like, oh, you're born with a talent, you're born in the right place, or something.
Right, or an alien plant like
Yeah, it happens
is
to
sold
you.
to you by a random guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting. So if you did not earn it yourself,
That'll
is that
get you.
the moral? Like, is that why there's in the original ending, is that why it doesn't work? Because it is not his success. It is unearned. It is something that was handed to him he made really bad moral choices along the way, and thus, like, it cannot stand.
That's
right?
interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point to ponder. I'd also never thought of this as a Faustian story, but now I feel kind of ignorant for not having done
A
so.
little bit. It's a little
Yeah.
bit of the deal with the devil.
This
yeah.
is kind of like Dan Yankees, if you think about it.
Yeah. I mean, there's not a literal devil, but it's definitely someone entering into a bargain that he can't actually keep up
Yeah.
Yeah.
the other end of.
And he almost didn't even realize that he was entering into it.
No, but that doesn't. I mean, I'm sympathetic to that, but
Right.
it doesn't really.
It doesn't
excuse
change
right? It doesn't
anything.
change anything.
Yeah.
It's still a really bad mistake.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Any closing thoughts from anybody?
Like, did you guys like this movie? It sounded
Yeah.
like
Yes.
Yes.
This movie
Yeah.
slaps.
Do you like it?
It,
Yeah,
it slaps.
I think it
I have
slaps.
text to prove it.
It's
I'm
a
actually
bop.
really
It's a
excited.
banger.
My flatmate hasn't seen it yet, and so I'm really excited about when we get time, like showing it to her, because
There you
I think
go.
she's gonna love it.
Oh, dark
My-
ending. Gotta go
Oh
with
yeah,
the dark ending.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I would
No other
agree.
way.
I would agree.
Yeah.
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 I think yeah, it's the more poetic. I think it's more satisfying. I get why audiences were like, "Don't do that," but
But like in the Reagan years, when everyone was
Yeah.
really hoping to like move out to the suburbs
Yes.
and have
Yeah.
somewhere that's green.
Hoping
there's
to not-
something
hoping
great
to
about
not be
seeing.
eaten.
Yeah.
Something great about watching those plants just take down
Yeah.
and destroy a city,
Oh, it's great.
burst
Yeah.
out of every wall, and
I don't know. I think there was especially, well, I don't know, because Sweeney Todd had already come out, but I feel like there's certain non-educated movie audiences or musical audiences. I think think that musicals
Sure.
are happy things. There's
Yeah.
people singing and dancing,
Yeah.
right? So
I love a
and then-
subversive musical.
And then something like this, happens, or
Yeah.
Sweeney Todd, or even like the end of West Side Story. If you didn't
Yeah.
know it was based on Romeo and Juliet, you'd be like, "What the hell? They've been like snapping their fingers and dancing the whole time, like that." Can't, but
Yeah.
to me, like other,
I want
like
my
I think
happy
theater
ending.
people are like,
Yeah.
we don't require our characters to be alive at the end because, like
Yeah.
in opera, they usually aren't.
And the great thing is that all these movies that you just named paved the way for films like Dancer in the Dark.
Right? Yeah. Perfect.
oh yeah,
Nobody would know what to do with that if it had come out in 1956.
Some
No,
people
that
still
would
don't.
not have.
I mean,
That's fair. That's more than
I
fair.
like that movie, but
yeah.
More than fair. Yeah.
Okay, well,
Wow.
this has been a great conversation about a movie that I'm so glad that you all enjoyed
Yeah.
because I think it's amazing. Yeah, thank you very much.
thanks a lot for
absolutely.
being with
Thanks
us.
for having
Yeah,
us.
Inviting
Yeah.
us, to your space here too. So,
Oh
great.
yeah.
All right, so do you guys want to plug anything before we say goodbye?
Oh goodness, let's see. This is coming out next week, November. Yeah, so 24 Flames Per Second is part of the Partyfish Media Collective, which you can, if you search Partyfish Media in your podcast apps or on social media, you'll find us. Let's see, what is starting new seasons in November? The Nifty Podcast is coming back. If you want to listen to our interviews from the festival with the best emerging filmmakers under the age of 25 from all around the world. I have the intro to the show memorized by now. Then go and check it out. That's NFFTY. If you search that, it's the only thing that'll come up. And these are amazing filmmakers. They're so great. When you're listening to this, we just got done spending 4 days surrounded by them, and it's one of my favorite times of the year. So go and check that out. On the network, VH Quest is coming back for their second season, which is a show all about VHS and physical media collecting, which is super exciting. Our buddy Ben Scott and Mike Graves, they host it. It's a lot of fun. And then there's a handful of other shows that are also on the network. Go and check it out. Partyfish Media. The show that we're all joining as a crossover from is 24 Flames Per Second. People arguing about movies. Go and check it out. That's all I got.
Awesome.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Just a little tiny plug.
go for it.
My theater company is called Hello Earth Productions. If you're in Seattle and want to get involved in free outdoor science fiction in the park, we are obviously not going to be ramping up until next year for next summer, but just keep us in mind. Follow us on Facebook if you want to get involved. Hello Earth Productions.
It's
Awesome.
very good stuff.
Thank
And
you.
next
Oh, yes.
next summer is Return of the Jedi, right?
It is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
I don't have anything to plug that hasn't already been plugged, so go ahead and listen to 24 Flames and all the Partyfish Media podcasts.
Yeah.
Great.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. It's been a pleasure having you and for also being on your show. We're very excited about all that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
And we're back.
All right.
So that was fun.
Yeah.
Definitely some things that, we did not think immediately when we watched it, right? It's super interesting to get other perspectives, especially from people who talk about film all the time. which
Yeah,
I think
like
Matthew and
legit
I-
film people.
Yeah, like we talk about film, but often we talk about film after we've been hanging out all night and drinking and smoking and you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like it's different to do this.
I mean, here's some behind the scenes for our listeners. One of the favorite pastimes that the friend group that Steven and I have, which basically includes our buddy Chris, who you've heard before, and my fiance Brian, we will just sit down and watch movies, and they might be good movies, they might be bad movies, but we watch movies and then we talk about them. And Chris has a huge background in English and stories in general, so he always has some strong opinions. I have some strong opinions because I used to want to be an actor, and I think that ultimately this is like right in our wheelhouse if we're not talking plants.
Yeah, I feel like this is the podcast that we would have if,
Yeah, that's why we've had several
hated
film
plants.
review episodes so far, including our one about
that's
the Judi
true.
Dench episode.
Yeah, that hard-hitting Judi Dench.
Yeah, Judi Dench's My Passion for Trees.
So, yeah, actually, you should check that out. That's our other drunk episode. Maybe we only do movie reviews drunk. Okay.
Well,
Let's-
hey, I am fine with doing that
let's think
because
about that.
drinking and movies is a
Yeah.
really great
It's a good
combination.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Is Seymour a plant person?
yeah, I feel like Seymour is made out to be a plant person, but let's look at the evidence. Seymour, at the very beginning of the movie, like one of the first scenes, is him pulling down a shelf on top of himself in a basement that apparently has literally no light.
It's very dark.
And plants that I identified on that shelf include a prayer plant, which, yes, is a low light plant, but it would die on that shelf because apparently that whole room was lit with like a 14-watt incandescent bulb.
Yeah, there was a cactus in there too, I saw.
Yeah,
Like
there were not
light
nearly
hun-
enough plants in
light
Seymour's
hungry
life.
plants.
Yeah.
That should not be above a washing machine.
Yeah.
I just feel like there's going to be some weird humidity happening, like as
Well,
if it would even need that to die. at
But a
that point.
Marinata plant would be super happy with extra humidity, but what would it do with the no light situation? And also, he just pulled it down on himself and then wasn't very worried about what happened to the plants that fell off of that shelf.
Oh, yeah. So down there, he could maybe have a Marimo ball. I mean, what else could you have?
I don't know.
It's sort of like bottom of a lake plants only.
Yeah. But, I mean, so Seymour claims to like plants. He doesn't have a setup for them. What plants did you notice in the movie, Steven? Because, this is a floral shop. There were a lot of synthetic flowers that we watched to get sold. But just like from our own horticulture historian-ness, when we were watching this movie together, Steven and I were noticing the plants that they included in the background scenes. So tell me, what stood out to you?
Honestly, I was looking at sort of broadly thinking about what is sold at a cut flower shop, right? I kind of brought that up, I think, when we were did we bring that up in the interview maybe? I don't remember right
We
now.
might have brought this up just between us.
Yeah, but at a flower shop, a cut flower shop, would you go there also for potted plants? I don't really do this in this modern time, right? Like if it says florist, I'm not typically going there and buying something in a pot. And I know these potted plants exist there, right? Like in an arrangement or something, but
Yeah, I feel like
I
a lot
thought
of
that
times,
was
like,
strange.
yeah, like as a plant dude, I feel like if I'm going to a florist, I'm looking for cut flowers, not potted plants, because I'm aware that the potted plants that a florist is going to carry are those ones that are meant to be like given as a bouquet that will live a little longer than a cut flower bouquet. So that includes a lot of disposable plants like the florist calancho, the florist miniature roses, or like any of those things that do not thrive indoors. Or, peace lilies. I feel like that's a staple of florist shops. Any of those like sympathy baskets that you can get for people, or congratulations baskets. It's not the best place to go, though, for quality houseplants that you intend to keep alive.
Yeah, I would never point someone to a florist first, right, before like a plant seller. But
Yeah.
I mean, did you notice anything species specific that was like anachronistic or just?
Well, anachronistic. I feel like this is a movie, like we've touched on in the interview, that is the 80s looking back at the 60s. And if we think about that period of the 60s, what are the plants that are super popular? It's the Monstera deliciosa, the Swiss cheese plants, blue leaf philodendron.
They
it's
were
the
not
snake
there,
plant. No,
right,
we didn't
in this
see.
movie.
We didn't see any of those like super iconic mid-century plants. But what we did see were a lot of plants in the Calathea marinata family. So there were prayer plants, there were calatheas, there was some ivy. There were a lot of plants that were popular in the time period that they filmed the movie.
Sorry, I'm gonna be Miles here. Are you
Sure.
saying Marantha?
Sure.
Is that prayer plant?
Yeah, prayer
Okay,
plants.
all right.
Thanks, Miles.
Yeah.
Hi, Miles.
God, Miles.
We love Miles. He always keeps me honest. Yeah, but like the plants that they featured as potted plants in the plant shop were like deliberately the plants that were easily available in the 80s. They were not doing any kind of like research about what was available for the
Yeah,
time period that they were
do.
doing. This is super nitpicky. Please don't think that we're being harsh on them.
It
This was
ruined the movie for us.
yeah, we actually hated it. We threw it out. We tore all the tape
we
out of the
turned it
VHS
off.
cassette.
That's right.
No,
5 minutes to produce a Swiss cheese plant.
no, but I mean, this is totally fine. We're like being really nitpicky and very particular. Yeah, but they didn't really show a lot of good historical accuracy to the plants being grown at the time.
Okay, so we're saying like Seymour was not necessarily a plant person. I
Seymour
don't
was a
think
plant person, but like a Hollywood version
Mr.
of that.
Who? Miskowitz? What was the guy's
Mr.
name?
Miskowitz?
What was his boss's name? I'm saying he's not a plant person either.
You know, now that you've thrown that off, I can't think of
I
it.
ruined it.
Mushnick.
Mushnick.
Yeah, yeah, and I know that
He
because
wasn't.
yeah,
I mean, Audrey's kind of a cashier. I mean, I think she's upfront about that.
Yeah.
She's not really into plants.
Audrey had this great moment where she was just like spraying some spray adhesive and throwing handfuls of glitter on calla lilies, and Stephen and I were both like shrieking at the TV when that happened. What are you doing? Yeah, but I mean, so ultimately, Seymour's supposed to be a plant person, whether or not we agree with it.
I mean, yeah, maybe he'd be a plant person if he weren't so tired and worried.
Yeah, he was really tired and really
Dismembering.
worried.
He's busy.
Yeah. So how do you think that he actually cared for this damn plant? Because
I don't know.
like originally, Audrey was planted in a Maxwell House coffee tin.
Yeah.
Do you think like most carnivorous plants are going to be pretty damn sensitive to the minerals?
So this, I mean, yeah, I don't think it's ideal at all, right? Because you talk about, like, I've read some things that are like, if you have aluminum in the soil, it can suppress root growth. Do carnivorous plants need, like, do they have a ton of, roots that are sensitive? I mean, some of these, genera don't. Some people do pour, like, dilute coffee into their Nepenthes pots.
Well,
But I don't think this is necessarily Nepenthes. Like, it was not suggesting that it was.
well, it was suggesting that it was a fly trap.
Yeah, I
Kind
feel like
of,
this
but
is
it's like
a
the alien fly trap.
I mean, hey, there's some weird fly traps out there.
That's
There's some
true.
weird hybrids. Okay, so frankly, maybe
This
this
is an
is
alien plant.
a newfangled alien hybrid. But I
Yeah.
mean,
It could
yeah,
even just be an alien
I
strain
wouldn't
species.
be putting. I've never heard to pour like coffee or coffee grounds into your fly traps. So listen, if you're trying to grow an Audrey, don't put it in a Maxwell House can. I guess is what we're saying, which is important.
Now, I mean, I kind of gotta say, it seems like Audrey 2, as a carnivorous plant, is significantly more hardy and adaptable than most carnivorous plants that we grow.
Very hardy to low light.
Yeah.
Growing in terracotta, not ever
yeah.
watered that I saw.
She was never
It
sitting
fed
in a saucer of water.
exclusively fed blood.
Where the fuck was Seymour getting an appropriate substrate for a plant? He
don't
didn't
know.
address that at all.
In
He has a
Chicago.
whole there's like a whole song about how he's given it plant food, he's given him dirt, he's given him
All of
water.
that should kill it.
Yeah,
okay?
but yeah,
Each
actually.
of those individually should mean death. But I think
Where was he getting enough distilled water?
I was gonna say that. I mean, Chicago water notoriously hard.
Now,
right?
I mean, ultimately, we don't know that this was in Chicago. We're just like making this movie be in Chicago because that's what it seemed
wait,
like.
yeah. Why did we think it was in Chicago?
Because I think that I said that. It seems like Chicago to me.
Okay.
Yeah. But ultimately, it's like some urban setting. It's this plant that should not be able to exist.
I just give him kind of like a C-. I feel like there's effort there. There's effort shown.
There's effort and there's interest. And ultimately, what more do you need? Knowledge?
I mean, a lot, but
Well, he gained that knowledge.
Okay, yeah, that's all you need to start.
Now, something we haven't touched on. Seymour did a really good job of identifying what the plant wanted. He
Was telling him in English,
not
but I'm gonna hear you out.
okay, the plant didn't start speaking until after he'd already given it some blood from his rose thorn pricked finger.
Okay.
It tried to eat the ass of that office secretary because she was wearing a red pencil skirt, so her butt looked like a drop of blood. I don't know. The plant didn't properly communicate until it came time for Seymour to feed the dentist to it. So he did figure out quite a lot to get the plant to the point where it could vocalize its needs.
So that makes him a plant person? Like, bring this home for me.
I mean, I feel like if my fiddly fig were to be like, I need more light, that would be really, really useful. But what Seymour did was he recognized that the plant wasn't thriving, so he was working hard to provide the cultural conditions that it needed.
Okay.
And the one part that he was missing was the nutrition aspect.
Yeah.
So instead of using a balanced, organic or slow release fertilizer pellet or something like that, he discovered that blood was the answer.
Okay, I guess
I'm really stretching
if you
this.
keep zooming out, Matthew, I guess I'm with you. We're at 80,000 feet right now.
Stephen, this is also a musical about a singing carnivorous plant from space.
All right.
We're just going to keep reminding each other of that.
Yeah. So, do you have plants with this much charisma?
Well, none of my plants literally sing to me.
None of them demand blood.
Well, here's what I thought was actually really cool about the way that they set this up. This was a plant shop, a florist shop, that was struggling because they couldn't get their customers to come in and buy plants. And because they didn't have the liquid assets from people coming in and buying shit, they couldn't provide more shit to attract more customers. So the moment that Seymour puts a really cool, really original plant that no one has seen in the window, some guy wanders in and is like, oh, that's an amazing plant. I'd like to get $100 worth of roses. That is actually one of the most relatable parts to me, is that as soon as you find a plant that gets people's attention, people are super into it.
Yeah.
So I feel like, it's not going to eat you, but if a plant shop had an Anthurium clarinervium, my #favorite plant, in the window, I would be more inclined to go inside than if it just had literally nothing but dust and cobwebs in the window.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Stephen, tell me, because I feel like you asked me the question, but I'm not the right one to answer. What plants that I grow do you think have the charisma of Audrey 2 that might get people interested in plants?
Okay, that's a little bit
I'm
of
really
a
putting you on the
reframe.
spot, I know.
That would get people interested in plants. All right, so in Matthew's home, there's a lot of plants, and a lot of the plants are kind of grouped together.
It's kind of a jungle.
Yeah, so I think often there's not really plants jumping out at you. What it is you're looking at a tapestry a little bit and you're finding things. So I think part of that is I'm attracted to the things I'm attracted to. So I'm sort of setting up my answer. A lot of the things I look at are on your table, where there's kind of fewer sort of
the
specimen
dining room
themes.
table?
Yeah,
Okay.
but those are super well lit. You can see from 360, right? So I keep coming back to that poinsettia, honestly, that you tried to grow after the season. Really interesting architecture, strange. Each time I would walk up and be like, what is this again? I'm like, oh,
And I'm like,
yeah.
it's Euphorbia pulcherrima.
Okay, sure. I mean, you were good enough to take it out of that foil pot and treat it like a
because it would die that way.
a being. Yeah.
Yep.
And I think your Helianthera minor is just very shapely. I feel like I see enough of those to kind of know what's out there. It's
And that's
shapely.
also in a beautiful bell jar.
So I'm saying it perfectly matches what it's put in. And there's just in something that's very slow growing, I think there's something going on all the time in there, every time I visit. And it's with this kind of really nice looking sort of natural toned riverstone. It's a really pretty piece of glass. I'm always impressed it's growing at such low light for that species. And it's growing well and colored, and anyway. So I keep going to those. Like, I
Okay.
bet if I were to inspect everything one by one, I might have a different answer, but those are the ones I go to.
You know, actually, I'm glad that you mentioned the Helianthera because I think that that is indeed my most charismatic plant.
Wow.
And that
I'm
is-
very surprised you
Well,
agree, actually.
and the only reason that I say that is because that is the plant that the most people comment on. It is the most striking of my
Really?
plants. It is presented in a beautiful way. And like I'm literally just growing it in a way to keep it happy with really high humidity under a glass dome, but it's on my dining room table. So it's in a really like prominent position in my apartment. It attracts so much attention from people who come into our home. I think that is probably my most striking plant.
Yeah, at retail, that would be a very expensive plant. It's just really nice.
Yeah, it's a plant that I picked up at Indoor Sun Shop.
So how about me, Matthew? I'm really interested in
Oh.
this because not long ago he told me his favorite plant was that pilea that one can acquire for like $2.99. So
Well-
I hope I just kicked your answer in the shins. I don't know if I did or not.
I actually would not say that your Pilea peperomioides is your most charismatic.
Few.
I think that it is one of your most beautiful houseplants, but if I was going to pick the most charismatic of your plants,
I'm not making eye contact with them right now. I'm
Okay.
like embracing.
okay, so Steven's going to cry softly while I say that he has this Nepenthes, and it is a Nepenthes aristocloides hybrid. I don't know what the other parentage is. We actually both have the same plant. We order them from California Carnivores at the same time. His is gorgeous. It has huge traps.
Good right now.
Yeah, they are like glistening. They are so richly colored. It is the plant in Steven's large collection that when I come into his apartment to record, I regularly want to go like check out to see how this plant looks. I think that it is gorgeous. It is so architectural. It is so striking. Steven, is there anything about the fact that we both just picked carnivorous plants as the most charismatic?
I don't know. I feel like I've won something. I've won season 1, our never-ending season 1.
Yeah, season 1 will end when our first year of podcasting ends. I don't know.
Wow. Okay.
No, but
News to me.
so, you know, we're discovering this just as you were listening to it, but I think that it's actually really interesting that we both just picked carnivorous plants.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
And I mean, does that kind of tie back to our movie? Like,
Yeah.
that would be the charismatic lead. Is
Wow, Steven and I have just come full circle on this topic. Maybe that's why they picked a carnivorous plant to be these.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. Like, Audrey, too, is undoubtedly one of the most significant characters in musical history.
Yeah, like, I don't know if a bowl of duckweed could have pulled that off, right? Like, the
No.
lead role.
What would the bowl of duckweed would have been like? Give me some distilled water.
Okay, this is truly,
Yeah.
I mean, this has gone off the rails now. This
Feed me,
conversation.
Steven,
And I'd be
with
like,
just a little
with-
bit of organic matter.
That's right. Slight, very dilute
Yeah.
fertilizer poured
Yeah.
near me.
Yeah. Seymour's song, instead of been like, I've given you plant food, I've given you dirt, it would have been like, I gave you a bowl of water,
And I laughed
and you thrived.
for-
and
That's
then
right.
I couldn't get rid of you. Yeah.
I think we just solved it.
Yeah, so actually, charismatic plants, carnivores. I think that it was really a natural and clever choice of them to use Audrey 2 as a character in this movie because Venus flytraps themselves are so interesting to look at. There's so much intrigue in the human mind behind a plant that eats like animal matter and that
Yeah.
moves in a way that is like physically visible with like the human eye watching it. Audrey 2 just like brings all of those elements together into a singing plant. I
Yeah.
think that it was really clever of them.
So, yeah, I mean, we both love this movie. We recommend seeing it if you haven't. We watched it on Amazon Prime in the US. We had to rent it, but it was,
It was
you know,
totally worth the $4.
yeah, great music. I think a lot of great actors, some that you don't see in movies very often.
And a lot of actors that you see in movies constantly.
Yeah.
Like, this movie is chock full of fantastic celebrity cameos. Everyone in this movie looks like they're having so much fun. Every role would be fun to play if you were an actor. I feel like one of the best like soundtracks for me just cleaning my apartment is the Little Shop of Horrors soundtrack.
interesting.
When Steven and I were watching this movie together, I just could not help myself but sing along with it,
There's
much
definite
to
singing.
Steven's chagrin.
I didn't hate it. I mean, I was writing notes, so maybe it seemed detached.
Yeah, and I'm just sitting there like, jamming out like a theater kid.
But yeah, no, we really recommend this movie. And we had a lot of fun talking with 24 Flames. Definitely recommend checking out their podcast. There's a lot of timely ones, like holiday-oriented ones. And
I have actually had a lot of fun listening to their current like Halloween-ish themed ones. They've done a lot of zombie movies this month. That was what I was listening to at work this morning. Was they're talking about zombie movies.
Yeah, so nice. I mean, interesting perspectives. Another local Seattle podcast. If you are in the city or not,
Yep.
it's even if you're not in the city, it's great. So
That's the great thing about
yeah,
podcasts.
check them out.
And you should also check them out, even if you don't like movies, because we have that upcoming episode where we talk about the movie Annihilation.
Yeah, you'll need to check that out because we're on it, right? Yeah, something
Yeah.
like that.
And spoiler alert, I wanted to like this movie. I didn't.
So we'll just leave that. And I mean, I didn't like it. I didn't particularly care about liking it or not. So
I love
that's just
Natalie
set it up.
Portman. I was so sad that like Gina Rodriguez and Tess Thompson are in this movie and it still didn't come through. Oh well. But the books were great.
We discuss. I mean, yeah. I think I would rather read the book. Anyway.
You should read the book. Okay, well, anything else you want to talk about?
I think that's all.
Okay, well, happy Halloween, everyone. And we are so glad that you listened to our Halloween special about a horror plant-based musical.
Yes,
Little
congratulations.
Shop of Horrors.
Congratulations for making it through our drunk episode
We're not that drunk.
anymore.
We wolfed down some burritos and tacos right before this.
This is a great coda to
Yep.
this. Okay.
Thank you, Rancho Bravo.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Happy growing.